The last video I did was on Adventure Gaming, which was a SPI publication from 1981 that presented three aspects of what they called the adventure gaming hobby. And in that game, in that magazine, they talked about historical simulation, a sci-fi game, and they presented a role-playing game also, sort of choose your own adventure type of thing. And they talked about all of those types of games as comprising one hobby, the adventure gaming hobby. And it's interesting because I have received this book from the publisher Haynes, and it is called Tabletop Gaming Manual by Matt Thrower. Here is his name there, pretty small. It's called A Guide to the Diverse World of Modern Tabletop Games, and as you can see from the beautiful picture here, the composite of many gaming components, it's also including, one imagines, this is meant to signify some RPGs. There certainly is sci-fi here. I'm not really sure I see historical simulation. Well, here we go, a mini there pictured. And I think, I said in that other video that from 1981 to now, I think times are very different. And, well, I don't even know if in 1981 that was a sort of fantasy idea that those diverse aspects of the hobby would be comprised in any one player. I think certainly now people play lots of different kinds of games, but the hobby has certainly grown and expanded and separated in many ways. So somebody playing historical simulation minis may not be the same person that is playing another type of game. That said, this book is a really interesting look into a lot of aspects of the hobby. It comprises history, and it's a visual reference, really. It is actually, in a sense, a coffee table book about tabletop gaming, as we'll see when we take a look inside. The back of the book indicates I guess their expected readership would be people who are interested in getting into the hobby. It talks about gaming enjoying a huge renaissance and board game cafes, and it says that this will guide you through all aspects of games, from popular and traditional to role-playing and minis. And then it talks about the aspects of the game. There's history in there. We'll see this, a guide even to doing upgrading your components and painting minis. The author bio, Matt Thrower has been writing professionally since 2012 and playing tabletop games since he could talk. He blogs at this site here, and he's also been a writer for The Guardian, PC Gamer, and some other magazines. The main draw of this book to me was both its breadth, and I saw part of it online and was really amazed by the photography and the visual presentation of the material, as you can see here just from the first spread. There's some gorgeous gaming photography in this book. The content, let's see, did I skip the table of contents? I guess I did. Let's go back to that and give you an overview. It really, the actual content of the book is a little bit all over the place in a way. It does have a history of games, and then it makes an attempt to, under grouping games, to talk about the various aspects of the hobby. Interestingly, or oddly perhaps, it doesn't use some of the terminology that I was expecting, like Euros and Ameritrash and things like that. It talks about wargaming and role-playing games and historical simulations, but some of the phraseology that I'm used to hearing around wasn't there. It talks about different ways of playing, how to store games. There's a whole section on upgrading games, adding components, basic information about painting minis and things like that. I'll show you that. There's pretty detailed. There's a very detailed chapter on what various aspects of die rolling does to a game statistically. That's quite interesting and relatively detailed. And then there is a chapter even on designing your own game. So it really is it is all over the place, and in terms of the readership, I'm not sure that somebody who isn't already in one aspect of the gaming hobby would be interested. I think it's more advanced than just to present the hobby to somebody who doesn't play games, because also I'm not sure you would buy a whole book about that. But for somebody who is into the gaming hobby and interested in other aspects of it, there is a lot here, a lot of information packed into this relatively slim volume. It's less than 200 pages, but as you can see, the font is pretty small and there's quite a bit of detail. Just paging through, this is the history section here, pictured Scopa. I have this game and I've never really gotten it to the table, and I think I may also have this game now that I see it here. I need to look more closely. I've got some cards that somewhat resemble this, and I was never sure what they were. This is an old version of Snakes and Ladders, beautifully photographed here, and indications of history of wargaming starting out and moving forward into role-playing games. There's little sidebars somewhere here. One of my favorites. Pictured that in a different video. We can see... Well, I can't find that. There is somewhere there was a sidebar, a little history of the editions of D&D. Maybe this is coming up here. And his differentiation of different types, he groups board games, role-playing games, and miniature games, kind of separates them out in a way. And this is where I think the readership is, on some level, supposed to be people who don't play games, because it's telling you, like, if you want to do this, maybe this type of game is for you. Again, I think the level of detail and specificity of the material here is probably too much for somebody who's not actually already into gaming. For example, this is a brief overview, pretty useful actually to me, on starting from 1974 up to 2014 of the various editions of D&D, what they did, how they changed in summary form. And of course you could search the internet all over the place and find that out, but it's nice to have it in one spot. And I did learn myself of a couple of indie RPGs, for example, that are mentioned here that I was not aware of, that I'm going to be looking into. Again, you can see some of the beautiful photography here. The book, just for the photos alone, I found to be quite pleasurable. The production quality is high, it's nice glossy paper, obviously 4-color throughout, and well-tight binding. Looks like it would hold up to repeated thumbing through. And I'm not going to go necessarily through. Here's a beautiful mini photo, and I think I will actually skip to show you. There's a whole section on buying and storing games. You know, some of this information I didn't find quite as useful as others, and again, it seemed to be a little bit all over the place. The section on painting minis, here we go, model behavior. Again, just a gorgeous spread of a minis game set up here. There is relatively a lot of detail, visual detail, in showing you what some tools might be, and minis is something that I have never really gotten into, because I feel that if you're going to go there, you really need to go there, and I just don't have the time for it. But I have a huge amount of respect for the people that do it, and I love to see painted minis. And they take you through here an example, a step-by-step process. This is from Warhammer 40K, and they show you page by page of adding the detail. And I think this would be a great primer for somebody, in fact, to go through if they were interested in starting to do that. And the math chapter, again, very interesting if you are a gamer and you want to understand something about the difference between rolling different types of die. So the difference between 1d6 and 2d6 is explained, and further very detailed, actually, information about what it means to make different game mechanic decisions in terms of taking in or taking out dice in a game, and how that can impact the rolls and the numbers that you get. I think this is Again, fairly high level for somebody who is, the math isn't high level per se, but the level of interest I think you would need in gaming to be interested in the chapter is pretty high. But for gamers who are, and then again, here's a section on how to fashion your own games. There's a short reference section at the end on some game design books. I have a ton of game design books myself, and I have some of these. They're excellent and certainly would represent the start to a very comprehensive game design library. I think for people who are in the hobby and relatively serious gamers, I think would definitely be interested in this book, as I was, and it offers information even if you're not going to paint minis, or even if you don't necessarily want to know all about varieties of role-playing games and the differences among the rule sets. If you're interested in the hobby as a whole, it's a nice one-stop shop that is, as mentioned and as demonstrated, extremely visually pleasing to thumb through as a reference, and would probably also be a great gift for a gamer who likes physical books and is interested in perhaps aspects of the hobby that they know less well because it doesn't necessarily meet their playing style. So that's a look inside the recently published Tabletop Gaming Manual by Matt Thrower, published by Haynes, which is a British publisher, but it is also available in the US. And here's a look at the credits, copy line, etc. of the book. As always, thanks for watching.